The time is 10 minutes before 8. We'll come back to our conversation concerning the Prevent programme and, of course, how you are to be able to gain access to your MPs while, of course, preserving the security of those MPs and preventing the sort of events we witnessed with the late Sir David Amess. Let's catch up on that and other affairs now with Armed Forces Minister Conservative MP James Heappey, who joins me now. Overnight, I'm sure you will have been briefed, there are reports that Putin has unleashed chemical weaponry on Mariupol. What's the latest you can give us on that, Minister? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. There's nothing really to add to the reports you've heard overnight. We're aware of them. We've seen them circulating on Ukrainian social media. We've been unable to verify them within Defence Intelligence here in the MOD in London, nor have any of our allies been able to verify them through their own intelligence agencies either. And indeed, President Zelensky in his address last night referred to reports of their use. The Ukrainian system hasn't been able to confirm their use as well. So we don't know yet whether they were used or not. But either way, I think it's important to say to your listeners that we are determined to verify whether they have been used. And that if they are used, as the Foreign Secretary has said, those responsible will be held to account, and absolutely all options are on the table in what that response might be.
Well, let's spell that out, if we could, please, Minister. Does that mean this is a red line and we might start to see deployment of British or NATO forces actually on Ukraine's soil?
Well, I think it depends on what is done, that the response would therefore be proportionate. And I think, as the Prime Minister rightly said the other day, there's real value in some ambiguity over exactly what the response would be, other than to say all options are on the table.
OK, so we can't rule it out, Minister?
No, OK. All options are on the table.
You referenced the Prime Minister. We also saw that he went on the weekend to Kyiv and had a very warm welcome from President Zelensky. This obviously helped morale, and he also talked about extra cash and kit. But are you aware that the 36th Brigade of, I imagine, the Ukrainian Army, have tweeted, or written, on Facebook, that they are, down quotes, they are running out of ammunition and almost close to their last bullet? Minister.
Yeah, it's the 36th Marines that are in Mariupol. It's a phenomenal defence of a city that has been at the very sharp end of it. Naturally, the kind of the pictures of the last 6 weeks have been really dominated by what's been happening in and around Kyiv. Mariupol, extraordinary how it has resisted, given that it was in the eye of the storm as Russian troops advanced up the coast of the Sea of Azov from the south, from Crimea, and in from the east, from Russia. And so they were very quickly encircled in the cities on the coast of the Sea of Azov. And that amazing Marine Brigade have withheld. Now, the reality is that their defence has been such that they have imposed enormous cost on Russia. They have written down some of Russia's most advanced and best equipped units. Clearly, our friends at the Ukrainian MOD are doing everything they can to resupply them. But the reality is that Mariupol is heavily besieged. And I think we just have to trust that our friends in the MOD in Kyiv are doing their best to support them. But the reality is that these people are doing something really quite incredible in their determination to fight to the last man and the last bullet.
Well, you're a military bloke. Pardon my ignorance here. Can't we airlift something in? Can't we drop some ammunition to help them?
It is obviously something that I know that the Ukrainians will be looking at, but I would just... Are we precluded from doing that because we don't want to be seen as overly aggressive, giving Putin ammunition back in Moscow? Is that where we go? I don't think it's anything to do with us appearing overly aggressive. The reality is that the air defense systems that the Russians have got in that part of Ukraine and over the border in Russia and in Crimea are enough to mean that getting a transport plane in would be very challenging indeed. And clearly, if Russia was to shoot down a UK transport plane, that would escalate the situation very, very quickly. I think much better is that we are getting as much to the Ukrainian MOD as we can. I had my counterpart here last week and we took him down to Wiltshire to show him the things that we're planning to send as part of the next tranche of UK military aid.
What are they, Mr. Heappey? What will you be sending, sir?
Well, there's 120 armoured vehicles that are in the process of being made ready, and the Ukrainian troops that will operate them will arrive in the UK in the next few days to learn how to drive and command those vehicles. There's more anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapon systems that we're sending. There are precision-guided weapons that we're sending. The Prime Minister said over the weekend.
That's tremendous. So we're going to be training Ukrainian blokes and women on our kit here in UK.
Yeah.
Fantastic news. Well done. Can I put it to you? One military commentator wrote on the weekend, you may well have seen this, Mr. Heappey, and the Prime Minister quite rightly paid tribute to the lion-like defence that the Ukrainian forces have put up. Is this because they've been able to enjoy a lot of close training with NATO and a lot of close tuition? Is this that bearing fruit, the way the Ukrainian army have fought off the great Russian bear?
No, the most important, the biggest reason is that they are patriots and they're outrageously courageous, brave, tenacious, and they fight like anything. We take huge pride in the fact that we've played some role in giving them the military skills to be able to bring that bravery and courage and tenacity to bear against the Russians. And last Tuesday at the event that we held down in Wiltshire on Salisbury Plain, where my counterpart, Vladimir Hakimov, was over with some of the Ukrainian generals, it was amazing. There was a sergeant from a battalion called Three Rifles who had done 2 tours of Ukraine on Operation Orbital, and it was just like he opened his address to our Ukrainian friends in Ukrainian, and then you could just tell how proud he was to be able to kind of show this vehicle that we're going to give to the Ukrainians and how effective it is, and how proud he was of the role he had played on 2 tours in Ukraine on Operation Orbital to train the Ukrainian armed forces. There's an amazing affinity between the British armed forces and the Ukrainian armed forces. We're phenomenally proud of what we're doing. And absolutely everybody in the armed forces is pushing the MOD hard to do more, support them more, just as the Prime Minister is and the public is, and that's what we're working hard to do.
Well, as they always say, if you want something done, ask a soldier or ask a military man or woman. We saw that with the vaccines, didn't we, the distribution of those. So that's going well. I have to ask you, Minister, perhaps not the same as can be said of the Home Office, where, although the numbers are improving, we still have an extraordinary number of frustrated Ukrainians unable to get access into this country, matched by, in some cases, frustrated families in Britain who have waited and waited, and they cannot clear a series of hurdles, which by now, surely we need some action. Can we put the military in charge of that as well?
I'd rather you didn't, Nick. I think we've got enough to be
Fair
going
point.
on with. But look, I think the Home Office have accelerated the way that they are clearing visas. I think it's about 40,000 that they've now cleared. Far fewer than that have actually Ukrainians have actually come to the
And
UK.
why is that, Minister? You're a candid bloke. What's not working? There's something that's not joining up. We've got phenomenal British or families living in Britain, hospitality. Yeah. We've got the efforts of desperate Ukrainians. We can't seem to plug them together.
So I think on the families, you're right. There's been an amazing outpouring of support. I think it's 200,000 people have made their homes available. And I know that through my own work as a constituency MP, my caseworker and I have been working quite hard to get people through the checks so that they can welcome the Ukrainians to their homes. And I've no doubt that we'll start to see many, many more people arriving in the next week or so than have arrived so far. But at the same time, Nick, what I also wonder is, when you see a lot of the broadcasters have now got their correspondents back in Kyiv, and what you see in the background is the streets in Kyiv returning to some sort of normality. When Vladimir, my counterpart, was over last week, he was telling me that restaurants and cafes and businesses are starting to reopen. They see it as their patriotic duty to get the Ukrainian economy back up and running as quickly as they can. So I'm just starting to wonder if from the center of from central Ukraine, whether people who were planning to leave might now go back to Ukraine and get back to central Ukraine and get on with their lives. So maybe the flow of refugees might be reduced. But then, by the same token, what I think we're about to see this spring and summer in eastern Ukraine may well mean there's lots of people displaced from there. So we do need to get this right and get people able to come here.
Last couple of questions. I'm sure you knew this gentleman well. If Sir David Amess wasn't the most popular MP in the whole of the House, he must have come a very close second. It seems quite extraordinary. We now can speak of his tragic murder. And we have an expert in the field saying that the PREVENT programme, I know this is a little out of your brief, I appreciate this, Minister, but the PREVENT programme is, quotes, a parish council response to a national security problem. To ensure your safety, the safety of all your colleagues on every side of the House, what needs to be done, and is PREVENT failing?
Well, look, the sort of prevent and the macro policy of counter-radicalisation, I think that the UK has had some success there. And actually, a lot of countries around the world ask us to help them with their counter-radicalisation programmes. So I think, we shouldn't be too critical of something that I think is widely regarded as a...
It did fail here, Minister. This man was referred to prevent some years ago.
So 100%, there are in any system there are failures. But Nick, there's a really important point. I don't think Sir David would want, as a consequence of his death, for MPs to retreat from what I think is the most important part of the service we provide, which is to make ourselves accessible through our surgeries for our constituents to bring to us whatever issue they choose. And I've had the most extraordinary juxtaposition in the last 6 weeks, where you go from a Thursday evening meeting in a top secret room in the MOD about the potential use of nuclear weapons, and then the following morning I'm sat talking to people about how the council hasn't fixed the fence on the road,
or the local bypass, or whatever it might be.
But that is the very lifeblood of our democracy. We're a parliamentary democracy. Access to your representative is vital. The parliamentary authorities and the police have done a good job in providing security and police cover for MPs where they feel vulnerable. But I know Sir David would not want the legacy of his death to be that MPs retreat from being accessible to the public.
Finally, Sir Keir Starmer is continuing to make hay over the tax returns and tax affairs of Chancellor Rishi Sunak. There's even a suggestion that senior politicians should publish their tax records. Doubting that your tax affairs are the front page of The Sun, I may be very wrong here, Mr. Heappey, but would you be prepared to publish your tax return?
Look, I mean, I've got to be honest, Nick, my finances are pretty uncomplicated. And like lots of people, by about the 20th of the month, I'm pretty worried about my overdraft rather than sort of any amazing tax budget. But to your question...
So we're not going to get you to the front door of an oligarch, then clearly, Mr. Heappey.
I don't want to duck your question, because actually I think that it is quite important that... I actually think MPs should be entitled to a degree of privacy. I think that when you become a minister, you must declare to the Register of Ministerial Interests all of your financial affairs. So whilst they are not a matter of open public record, they are certainly declared to the civil service so that any conflict of interest can be understood, and you then recuse yourself from any issue in decision-making within government where that interest could be relevant. I think that that's the right thing. And I think it's important. My tax return is a blank piece of paper, effectively. Everything I get, I pay on PAYE. So it would be really easy for me to say, yeah, publish it. But I just think there's a point of principle that actually there are mechanisms through the Parliamentary Register of Interests and through the Ministerial Register of Interests for us to be very clear about where there are conflicts. And I actually think it's quite important that people in public life are allowed some privacy.
Grateful for your time. Best wishes to you and your colleagues and the work you're doing to help those in Ukraine. James Heappey, Armed Forces Minister, appearing here on LBC 3 after 8. Let's get the news.